Hi, today we'll be doing a lesson on the Westward Expansion. So first let's brainstorm. What do you think the word expansion means? Because when I think of expansion, I think of things getting bigger. So when you hear what Westward Expansion, what does that make you think of? Can you use your context clues to kind of infer what you already know about these other words and put them together? And what do you think the goal was with the Westward Expansion? So what is the Westward Expansion? So the Westward Expansion happened in the 19th century, and settlers moved west in hopes of bettering their lives and more opportunities. To move, the government had to acquire land because originally they started out as 13 colonies, and they had to do this through purchases, treaties, and even war. The Westward Expansion was an important factor in shaping American life, and many immigrants moved during this time as well. So it wasn't just Americans moving west, it was also immigrants moving north and things like that as well. But Native Americans have already been living in these territories and on this land for years. So we'll also discuss how it affects them as well. So why move west? Well, first of all, space. The population grew by millions in a few years, and so imagine living, just a foot away from your neighbor. So the idea of moving west and having all this land that you could acquire was really nice. So the government implemented the Homestead Act of 1862, which was basically when Americans could apply for homesteads, which was free land given to them from the government, and it was about 160 acres worth of land. This didn't always work out because a lot of the homesteads that the Americans were getting were not suitable land to live off of, so they weren't able to farm on it and things like that, and so it really was kind of a setback for them as well. They also had new technology. They had the telegraph, so they were able to communicate with others farther away, and then they had the barbed wire, which created property lines, and then also for cattle as well, they were able to use that to keep them in their property. And then next we have transportation. So we have steamboats, canal, and railroads, and this is also during the time when the Transcontinental Railroad came about. So when you see this picture, what do you see? You notice the different people, the different animals. I noticed a buffalo down here. What do you think the girl in the middle represents? Like, she's kind of like angelic. She's holding a Bible. So also notice the direction that the people are moving in. They're all moving west. So this picture represents manifest destiny. So manifest destiny was the idea that Americans' God-given right was to own land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. This was an ideal that many Americans shared, and they wanted to share their culture and their religious all throughout the land. It wasn't, just moving here and taking it over. They wanted to share their beliefs with others. So how did the 13 colonies turn into the 50 states that we have today? So first we have the Treaty of Paris, which was signed September 3rd of 1783. The Treaty of Paris was signed between the U.S. and the Great Britain, and this was the first pivotal step for America. They were able to be recognized. Britain recognized them as a republic, as their own republic, and so this meant that U.S. was completely independent. This happened after the American Revolution War, so they did have to go to war to get this. But as you can see, this is the original area of the United States. So this was recognized as its own country now. So next we have the Louisiana Purchase, which was happened April 30th of 1803. So the U.S. bought the Louisiana Purchase from France. Napoleon sold it to the U.S. for $15 million, and the U.S. in turn gained over 800,000 miles of land. So they got it for about 4 cents a mile, which is crazy to think about. The reason Napoleon decided to sell it and sell it for that cheap was because he needed funds to fight his war against Britain. So ultimately he was gaining something in return, and honestly he wasn't interested in setting up territories over there. So after we have that, we have, you know, the orange and the pink. So we acquired a bunch of land from that sale. So next we have the Florida purchase, or the Florida cession, I'm so sorry. We got this from Spain. This was really important for us because we gained access to the Mississippi River. We had the Mississippi River, and that was really important for trade. And so we were able to do a lot more with that and gain a lot more as well. So you can see we have all over here, and we're just missing this half of the United States. So next we have the annexation, Texas annexation, which happened December 29th of 1845. So Texas actually at this time had become its own republic. It separated itself from Mexico, but Mexico didn't really recognize it as its own republic. So Texas realized they can't live on their own as their own republic because they don't have all these different allies, and they don't have the resources that they need, number one, to, you know, grow them or have them, or even reach out to other countries and implement trade as well. So they reached out to the U.S. and the U.S. agreed to annex them, but this also resulted in the American-Mexican War, which the U.S. did win. So after that, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. So they won the land and they were able to annex Texas into their own country. So you can see that they have all of this now. But shortly after, they also have the Mexican cession, which also comes in ties with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The U.S. paid Mexico $15 million and relieved them all of their debts from the war and all of their, you know, damage costs in order to gain this section of land. The U.S. had better resources, so Mexico wasn't really willing to fight them for it. And they were also having war with other countries, so this really helped their war funds as well. So we now have the yellow, the green, the orange, and the pink. So we're still missing a few pieces. So next we have the Oregon country. This one actually took place before the Mexican cession. So this one was really important at the time. So British didn't want to fight the U.S. for this territory. Spain had already kind of given up the territory in that section to the United States. So the only people they had to get to was Britain, and Britain didn't want to fight. So the Oregon Treaty was signed, and this was the first section that touched the Pacific Ocean. So they finally had land from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So it was a really important and a really pivotal part of their plan. So you can see we have everything from here over, except for this little buddy down here. So we have the Gadsden Purchase in 1854. So this purchase was from Mexico. They paid $10 million for it, and they believed this would resolve some conflicts between the U.S. and Mexico. And it provided land for the Transcontinental Railroad. So again, it really was pivotal for us because we were, you know, creating transportation and creating different things to help people get from the east to the west. So that's how we gained the whole 50 states. So what were the negatives of the Westward Expansion? So first, Native Americans were forced off of their land. They were often put into assimilation camps, or they were given land that was not suitable for them to live off of, and they were treated very cruelly. They suffered because of the American government, and the government did not protect them from American settlers. So ultimately, they had a lot of negative impact. Bison were killed by American settlers, and their population declined, which was again in turn bad for the Native Americans, specifically the Plain Indians, because they relied on these buffalo to live off of. And so, you know, the Native Americans really suffered, and their land was taken from them, all for the American ideal. So we also have to recognize the pain that the Native Americans went through so that our American life could be greater, at the time at least. And so, you know, it was really hard on them, and so we have to make sure we always recognize that the Native Americans were stripped of a lot of things and not take the land that we have for granted. And that is the end of this lesson. Thank you.